All right, so as we're getting even deeper into this, even our healthiest foods can have anti-nutrient, kind of bad healthy aspects to them. Why would that be? That doesn't make sense. So let's dive into this topic of lectins, phytates, and oxalates. Oh my. Yeah, this is how weird my brain works, you know? Like 11 o'clock last night, I'm like going, I need to find lions and buyers. I'm going to go get that Wizard of Oz picture. It's so stupid, but that's me. All right, so what are we talking about here? If you've ever heard of a Dr. Gundry, yes. He wrote a book called The Plant Paradox. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of wisdom in it. I don't think it's 100% accurate. I think it's maybe overkill. But most people are in a crisis. Most people who are going to go buy that book are people that are in a crisis. So he's going to hard sell it. I don't know him. Maybe that's not true. Maybe he totally is bought into his own hype. But lectins, phytic acid and oxalic acid are how plants keep from being killed by pests. For example, he's very down on tomatoes and nightshades. What's my whole freaking garden right now? It's like tomatoes and peppers, and right? Like I have to go up the Schofield, ratings, right? I planted ghost peppers and Carolina Reapers, right? So I'm like, I like spicy, right? But what is that spice? It's lectins. It's lectins, okay? And they are damaging to the body in excess. There seems to be some benefit on the front end, just like alcohol, small amount. How does it work? It's triggering our defense mechanisms in a controlled burn. It stimulates our immune system and our inflammatory system to kind of be always ready. So that's how they work. A lot of the products in our cleanse, in SP Cleanse, that make people go, man, I have to pee all the time, and so I'll get these sudden urges to evacuate my bowels, and it's like, yeah, they're supposed to do that. Those herbs and stuff in there are pissing off your system enough that if you do that enough, that it's kind of ready. It's kind of ready without having to go, what? And it's spraying the trees like Rambo, Okay? So lectins are primarily in the skin and in the seeds. So what do? If you're going to have your peppers, blanch them, take the skin off, and scrape out all the seeds. And just doing that will probably reduce, on most cases, anywhere from 50 to 70% of the lectins. Just doing that. Right? You make your spaghetti sauce, you throw your tomatoes in, you blanch them, get the skin off, right? So you're going to do that anyway. If you're using big beef steaks, take the seeds out. Use the fleshy part, take seeds out, blanch them, take skin out. Just doing that. Cooking also gets rid of a lot of it. Okay? But if you slow cook it on a low temperature, you may not denature all of it. You have to cook it pretty hard. So the trade-off is, in order to get rid of the lectins, you're also destroying most of the nutrition. So, right, there's kind of somewhere in there, probably for each plant type, there's probably the ideal ratio of least amount of damage and most amount of benefit. Okay? I don't know what that is. It's kind of new science. Nobody really knows that, as far as I can tell. But something to consider. Same with phytic acid. Phytic acid, like my grandmother was allergic to almonds, or as they say in the South, almonds. And they say that because when they're off the tree, it's because something knocked the hell out of them. so that's a joke she used to say. And so my daughter, her mouth would get all itchy and everything too when she'd eat almonds. And we discovered this cute little secret about almonds. If you boil water, toss them in there for, literally 30 seconds. And you take them out, the skin comes right off. Like, you can literally, the kids when they were little would shoot them at each other. Right? But now you have those blanched almonds, right? And they're white. Now you just removed 80% of the phytic acid because it's in the skin. Right?
Okay.
Same. What's better for you, brown rice or white rice? Well, it depends. Brown rice is high in phytic acid, really high in phytic acid. one of the highest actually. So how can you lower it, get the fiber and the nutrient benefit rather than just eating the starch of white rice? How can you get the benefit from it? And what you do is you soak it overnight. So you soak it overnight, and basically what you're doing is you're starting to germinate the seed, which is what rice is, right? And this is true of any seeds or any nuts, right? If you soak it, then, or grains, like your oatmeal, your wheat berries, if you're going to make your own porridge, what have you, what happens is when it activates that, the seed begins to produce an enzyme called phytase that breaks down the phytic acid. Pretty groovy? So you can get charts, different beans you need to soak for different amounts of time. You must soak them. You must soak all beans. As a matter of fact, things like pinto beans, kidney beans, if you ate those just out of the pod, if you eat, I want to say it was, I might be wrong on this, don't hold me to this number, I seem to recall it was something low, like 9 ounces. It could kill you. Like kill you, like brain damage, kill you. So you have to process this stuff, right? You have to process it. So the best way to do is soak it. Now let me tell you something I read that I found quite fascinating. Was here's how you can make it even better, and this is probably true of other nuts and seeds too, but they've done the study on brown rice, is if I soak it overnight, I pour 10% of that liquid off into a jar, toss it in the fridge, rinse the rest out, rinse that off, cook it. Good to go. I've probably eliminated a good 70-75% of the phytic acid. Okay? Now, next time I'm going to make brown rice, I take my jar out of the fridge, I pour that in over the rice, and then I top off the rest with non-chlorinated water, right? Soak it again. Same thing. 10% off. Rinse it, cook it, put this in the fridge. Next time, I do it again. By about third or fourth time, you've got a jar that's almost 100% phytase. So now I can eliminate 100% of the phytic acid. Do you need to be that fastidious about this? Probably not if it's a hassle. It doesn't sound like that big of a hassle to me, but you probably still don't need to do it. If you're in crisis, I would say you should do it. If you're already in crisis, if you've already got, problems with your gut, you've already got problems with your joints, those kind of things, you're already getting rashes and things like that from time to time that are unexplained, then you're probably triggering some of these sensitivities, and it would be worth doing that. Most of us, just doing the soak, rinse, cook, that'll do it. Okay? That's going to be true for all your whole grains as well. Right? Rice is a grain. Corn is a grain. All your grains, you need to do this. Okay? Oxalates are going to be things like in kale. They're leafy, primarily in leafy things. Spinach is high in oxalates. So how many of you do like raw spinach in your smoothies, raw kale, stuff like that? I would say every blue moon, that's probably a non-issue. But don't make a big habit of it. Don't use it as your staple.
I was just seeing something about that doctor saying something about spinach.
Exactly, because it's high in oxalates. Oxalates are linked with things like gout and kidney stones and things like that, right? So you ideally you want to cook this stuff, right? You want to, because if you cook it, it breaks down the oxalates pretty quick. Make sense? All right, so that's what we've learned. Okay. Next, let's talk about gluten. Okay, anybody here know somebody with a gluten sensitivity? Yeah, here's a goofy thing. Like, did anyone remember gluten-sensitive people when they were kids?
No.
Those of you that are now currently gluten-sensitive, were you gluten-sensitive as a kid?
No.
Not that you knew, right? So here's the deal. There's a lot of theories about gluten. Here's what I believe is the issue. There's two pathways that I think and I think they both exist. Number one, I think most people are not sensitive to gluten. They have like a grain allergy. They're actually allergic to grain, or at least sensitive to it. Why do I say that? Like 90% of the corn, probably 80% of the wheat grown in the United States is GMO factored. So they've modified the DNA so that it will either A, be more resistant to Roundup, or so that means they can dump more poison indiscriminately on the fields, or B, produce its own pesticides. So think of like lectins, oxalates, and phytic acid times 10, right? And the way that works on the bugs is it destroys their intestinal system. That's how it works. What do you think it does to some human beings? Evidently, it's screwing up their digestive system. So that's one theory. The second part of that, the sub-part of that, is that by making our wheat grow exactly the same height and come right at the exact same time, what we've done is we've narrowed the protein profiles so that it's like one strain of wheat. And some people are going to, over time, like you could get one bee sting, no problem. Second bee sting, it swells a bit. Third one, man, it's like I'm getting tight in the throat. Fourth one could kill you. Right? So some people probably have that. And what they would have done in the past is they went, I don't like the bread I get from Grog. I'm going to go over to Mark's and get his bread because it feels better. And that was because back in the day, farmers would always retain back a bit of their wheat. And they would get cross-pollination from other farmers in the area. So we always had a pretty decent variety of these things in our diet. That's not so much true now with big agribusiness. So the trade-off, I mean, yeah, we feed more people more efficiently and it keeps the prices down. I'm not saying that there aren't really noble reasons behind how we got here. However, I think with the current knowledge where we're seeing just higher and higher and higher numbers of people that are gluten sensitive, I'm going to think we passed the get off the freeway exit a while back. And we need to change this and get back to more. We're never going to get rid of agri-farming, but maybe be willing as consumers to support the farmers that are trying to do it different. So that our kids and grandkids have at least a go at it. Right? Bring more value to that. All right. Some of the things that we see with those sensitivities, obviously, celiac disease would be the worst of them. That's where you literally have a genetic reason that you can't contend with gluten. But that's actually a very, very small percentage of the population. But a lot of these things, basically non-celiac gluten sensitivity, it's all the same symptoms of celiac. Ulcerations in their GI tract and what have you. So what I think is what's happening with this is that we're getting an autoimmune response. It's making holes in our gut lining that are allowing macromolecules like gluten to cross the membrane that normally would not have been able to do that. And I believe that's also when people go, oh, well, you got ulcers because of H. pylori. That would be like saying, the bird was dead because of the maggots. No, the maggots are there because the bird was dead. Right? The H. pylori is because the lining of the gut was damaged and dead. Parts of it, areas of it. And the H. pylori is there to clean up the mess. But then it becomes pathological. Make sense? All right? Just like the maggots. They're there. Otherwise, we'd be like there'd be dead animals all over the place, right? The FODMAPS, I put that one on this because three of my patients were crashed. They were crashed. They were dropping weight. I mean, it was like, dude, you got cancer or something? I mean, they were sick all the time. They're losing all their weight. They're just shredding down. And they got on the FODMAP eating plans where you're getting rid of all of these fermentable carbohydrates. You're getting them. So it's a really restrictive diet, and within a year they're cured. Right? They're cured. And it's like 3 out of 3 so far. So why do I bring that up? Not to say we should all eat this way, but what I'm saying is the people that we know and love, and including ourselves, that if we're struggling and suffering, we got to do the basics first, man. Do the basics first and do it without, you can't cheat. You cannot cheat. And that's the hardest part. You can't cheat. You just got to be okay with that. All right, the grain thing. Let's just do this really quick. Yes, even whole grains, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Phytic acid, which I've already talked about. They're relatively low in nutrients. This is all the nutrient part here. I mean, it's a very small part, maybe 10% of the entire grain, seed. They're high in sugar, right? All this is sugar. All this is sugar, right? That's how we make high fructose corn syrup. That's how we make malt so that we can brew beer. And that's ultimately how we take beer and distill it and get grain alcohol off of it. So just so you know, in its extreme refined state, that would be alcohol. And if you drank pure straight grain alcohol, like a jar of it, it would kill you, right? So please understand that's not necessary. In excess, this is not good for you, right? And then most of it, as I mentioned, is genetically modified. So look, if you really want to fix your problems, if you really want to get the weight off and what have you, one of the best things we can do in our culture is just eliminate grains for about 6 months to a year. Just eliminate it totally.
Even oats?
Even oats. All of it. All of it. Now, with that said, do I think you need to do that forever? No, I don't. I think once you've balanced your metabolism, what does that look like? You guys, I always hate this. I don't want anyone to feel judged. When I get out of the shower in the morning, I'm standing naked in front of this big mirror. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed. Like, I'm kind of ashamed of my body. Like, I'm conscious of it. You know what I mean? I get out to the river and I wear a t-shirt now. I didn't do that when I was 24. I was ripped, right? Look, we all know. Like, be honest with ourselves, right? If you're ashamed of your body, you need to fix these things, right? Get it fixed and then eat the oats. Because there is nutrient in that, right? I wouldn't say eat oatmeal cookies. But I might say get steel cut oats, soak them overnight, pour the phytic acid off, and then cook that porridge. Because you do get some of those other healthful things like lignins and things like that actually have been shown to clear junk out of your arteries. That's a good thing. I just don't think it's good enough to offset the negatives if you're already in metabolic crisis. Yeah? And if you're overweight, if you're ashamed of your body, I'm not talking like crazy shame like Kate Moss anorexia shame. What I'm saying is, like, a healthy, I could do better. If you're there, then fix it first, and then we'll talk about whether or not we can start introducing some nice hot sourdough bread smeared with some good fresh butter. You know what I mean? Right? Right? I like it too, you guys. I like it. I get it. All right. How do we do this? Once again, cooking, right? Soaking. Germination, which is soaking it a little bit longer, right? Fermentation, which is letting the activation of the phytase enzyme take place, the fermentation part. Like our great-grandparents ate lots of fermented food.
Yes, they did.
Most people now eat very little, if any. Like even the pickles and stuff, even the sauerkraut we buy most of the time is just, it's artificially fermented, it's just soaked in vinegar. Versus natural fermentation where you have specific types of yeasts that are breaking down those sugars and turning them into more useful things for our nutritional value, which is what our gut bacteria is supposed to do too. Most of our digestion is done by other entities, other organisms, right? Most of it. You have a healthy gut. A healthy gut has more foreign cells in it than you have cells in your body. Kind of a little weird invasion of the body snatchers, right? And they do release certain chemicals that motivate you to behave in different ways. So it kind of is a bit of an invasion of the body snatchers. Anyone ever get the hangries? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, man. Your gut bacteria and stuff will start sending signals that say, kill the next thing, come along, man. That's my kid. Yeah, well, it'll lower your overhead. So you start getting excuses, right? It's not good. It's not good. It's not good. Don't listen to the demons, right?